Hello, my name is Michael Sawyer, and this is my video for Theology.One, Week 8 discussion. So, my thoughts on the Incarnation reading this week was very interesting. I do appreciate the thought on Jesus, which Jesus probably fits all the traditions, but how they really emphasized his humanness, like reaching out to people, but then also showing his divinity through things like the Transfiguration. But the more human character was Susanna, and how she showed her tradition, or showed her like godliness by teaching her children at home. She would teach her children by doing homeschooling essentially in the 1800s, which was tradition back then. But usually it was through like a tutor or something like that. But she taught her all 10 of her children on her own, and not only did she teach them like math and English and history, but she also taught them the faith, and like they're starting to read Genesis from kindergarten, which is crazy. I mean, even in today's standards. And through this, she created her two sons, John and William, I think, created the Methodist Church, and not only did she teach her kids from home, and created the two greatest beings that were like God, but she also started like a Sunday night service that had more than her husband's service, and which she started before when he was on a trip to London, and how she just made her own church, and people started attending the church, and like she was leading it even as like a woman pastor of sorts, even though she didn't go through the whole training, and that's really cool, interesting, and awesome, because it showed even back then like women are in leadership, which is very against the tradition back then of Baptist and Catholic, and through that, like, she really showed people, even her husband like was disagreeing with her, and she showed like, hey, women can be just like Christ too, and which is like very against the tradition, and how like she spoke out, and she continued, and she grew the church, and she even had an influence on the Methodist Church as well, which had an influence on the holiness tradition and the Pentecostals, and it just kind of led to all these different things like through her. But she's not talked about very much, but her story really shows kind of the split the tradition, which leads me to the second question of how the whole week has been breaking the tradition, it seems like, with Martin Luther, and I always forget who the other guy they talked about in class or in the videos, but just how they all broke away from this tradition of being the same and conformed, and how they just like how basically need to follow these sacraments and all these rules and whatnot. But here they were like showing others like, hey, this is also ways to follow Christ. Martin Luther saying like, hey, we don't need a priest, and then all these sacraments, and then with the mom, dang, I just forgot her name, even though I just said it 5 minutes ago. Anyway, but it just showed how like she could lead others, even though that like you don't need a man to do that, and then even like with the second video with the Eastern Orthodox, like it's just so different. Like we don't need to be in this one tradition. Like we are probably more like Catholic than Eastern Orthodox, but yet these traditions show different things, and it just really shows that like we don't need to be under this one thing, whether that's whether that's like a Baptist tradition to Catholic tradition to even Eastern Orthodox, and like how just and that each of these bring different things, and there's no one right answer, and God will lead us in different paths to be like different parts of the body, and it's all about the church, like even though they're all different parts from the different places, and now with Lent starting this week too, and with the chapels, like we had this tradition of the ashes and the Ash Wednesday, and it's all about these traditions of going to Christ, and it's just different, whether it's women speaking like in the video, or Martin Luther breaking away from these priests, or the Eastern Orthodox using icons, or like all these different things that are different but yet unified, diverse but unified. It seems like is what this week is, and all these different traditions bring that together.